One of the most powerful ways that I transform almost any situation in my life is by looking at how that situation occurs to me. This means looking at the context through which I make meaning of a situation. Often circumstances might be what they are. I can't control what's happening, but I can always control the context through which I perceive a situation. A few years ago in 2011, I spent a year living in my car on the streets of San Francisco, struggling to continue working on my startup. And there were many times during that period that I wondered, how am I ever going to work my way out of this situation? And at some point I told myself that if I could navigate this, if I could find a way through, that I'll be able to navigate anything that comes at me in life. And this is an example of working with context. I could have told myself that I was a failure, that I wasn't good enough, how could I end up in this situation? And all of those would have been, in some ways, a disempowering perspective on my situation. But instead, I chose to look at it through a lens that empowered me to live into a future that was important to me. This is the power of working with context, is that often we try to focus on the situation directly, and that can take a lot of energy. But when you shape your context in a particular way, the way that you respond to the situation becomes a function of how that situation occurs to you. So if it occurs to you as an opportunity to become who you want to be in the future, then obviously you're going to be more motivated to engage with that situation in a way that's conducive towards a positive outcome. And we do this all the time in subtle ways. Imagine you lost something that was valuable to you, and for a while you'll feel bad about it. Then at some point you might tell yourself, well, at least I get to practice non-attachment, or at least I get to upgrade this thing. Or maybe your team has had a failure, and for a while you might beat yourself up about it. But then maybe you ask yourselves, well, what's the opportunity here? How could we transform the situation so that the outcome is even better than what we were working towards? And all of these are examples of operating at the level of context. And this is so powerful, both personally and in any group situation, especially whether you're learning together or working together. So for example, every time that we run a long form learning program, we always begin with a conversation about what future becomes possible through your participation in this program. People are coming from all different walks of life and have different priorities, and it's likely they'll get busy and drop off at some point. But by creating a context that's relevant to what is meaningful to them, we're able to bring people together in an empowering way where the way that they participate is a natural outcome of how the situation occurs to them. And it occurs to them that this is relevant to something that they want in the future. And the same is true when you're working with a team. Why are people there? Is the person just there to do the job to get a paycheck? Or is the person there to develop themselves for a future career opportunity? Or are they there to work on something that's bigger than themselves because it's really meaningful to them? All of those are different contexts. And as a leader, when you recognize that, you can work with people to shape a context that becomes empowering for the work that they do. And I believe this is so fundamentally important with everything going on in the world today, particularly with the amount of conflict and polarization and division that we see. All of that occurs through context. If you have a war zone, say, between the red people and the blue people, and a bunch of blue people are getting killed, how do people make meaning of that situation? Obviously, if you are a red person, you're overjoyed that your side is winning and the other side is incurring losses. And if you're a blue person, you're outraged that your people are getting killed. The same thing is happening. It's just people are getting killed. But the way that you make sense of it depends on your context. And when you recognize this, it changes everything. The challenge with context is that oftentimes it's invisible. We don't see it. There's a story I love of two baby fish swimming through the ocean, and they pass by a grandfather fish who looks at them and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And then they keep going for a few minutes, and then one of them turns to the other and says, "What is water?" Right? This is context. Context often is so close to us that we don't recognize it there. But I believe this is maybe the single distinguishing factor of a self-transforming mind is the recognition of one's own context, one's own situatedness, of one's own meaning making, and recognizing that everybody has this, and also that we have the power to shift the way that we make meaning, and doing so fundamentally transforms our response. And when we can recognize this and do so collectively, it fundamentally changes the way that we can respond together as a group of people. And this changes everything. So whether we're responding to a conflict and considering how are we making meaning of this, what is our identity here from which we are responding, and actually working at that level, then the situation can be what it is, but the way that we respond fundamentally changes everything. All right, my friends, thank you for watching. I hope this has been useful. I would love to hear from you. How do you work with context in your life? How is any of this landing and relevant to you? Please share your comments below. So much love.